My name's Evan Reeves, and 3 months ago, I was assigned to the Black Pines National Reserve, a stretch of forest in northern Washington that locals like to call the woods that never sleep. They weren't kidding. I arrived just before dusk, with the rain still clinging to the treetops and the last light bleeding out behind the ridge. The ranger outpost sat at the edge of a gravel road, a squat, wooden structure with rusted window screens and a single radio tower leaning like it had given up years ago. Waiting for me on the porch was Chief Dalton, gray-bearded, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who'd seen too many winters and buried too many rangers. His eyes didn't blink much. He didn't waste time on introductions. He just handed me a small, weathered notebook. Its edges were blackened, like it had been pulled from a fire. Across the cover, written in fading ink, were 4 words: the Black Pines Protocols. He said, voice gravelly and deliberate, if you follow the rules, you'll live. If you don't, you'll meet the ones who didn't. I thought he was joking, or hazing me. Every post had its own traditions. Ghost stories meant to spook rookies into staying alert. I tucked the notebook into my jacket pocket and laughed it off. But Dalton didn't laugh back. He just stared past me, toward the dark wall of trees, and muttered, almost to himself, "You'll hear them before you see them." The shift started at 8 p.m. I ran my checks, the generator, the perimeter lights, the radio channel for emergency calls. Everything looked normal, ordinary, but the air felt wrong, heavy like it was listening. By midnight, the forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no insects, not even the hum of the tower. Just nothing. That's when I remembered what the locals said in town. Black Pines isn't haunted. It's hungry. I tried to shake it off, but something about that silence gnawed at me. It wasn't peace. It was expectation. I sat down at the desk, pulled out the old notebook, and opened to the first page. The handwriting was shaky, ink smeared and uneven, but one thing was clear. These weren't warnings. They were survival instructions. I didn't know it then, but that night, something in the forest already knew my name, and it was waiting for me to break a rule. I sat there at the desk, the storm tapping soft fingers against the window. The old notebook lay open in front of me, its pages yellowed and warped, corners singed like it had been too close to something that burned. The handwriting was uneven, jagged, desperate, sometimes slanted sideways as if written in panic. I could still smell something faintly metallic on the paper, like rust or blood. The first page read, "The Black Pines Protocols, for those assigned beyond Station 3. There were 8 rules. Simple on the surface, but the more I read, the more my stomach tightened. 1. If someone says they're lost but won't approach the firelight, leave them. They're not lost. They're returning. I frowned. Returning? Returning from where? I remembered the way Dalton had said, "You'll hear them before you see them." Maybe this was one of those ghost stories, a way to keep rangers from getting lured off patrol routes at night. Still, something about that phrasing, "they're returning," didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a memory. 2. Never follow crying. It's never where it sounds. I could almost hear it as I read, soft, distant, drifting between the trees. The forest had a way of playing tricks on sound. Maybe that was all it meant. But my hands had started to sweat, and the next page felt cold to the touch. 3. After midnight, the watchtower is not your shadow. Don't look at it. That line didn't make sense. The watchtower was 20 yards from the cabin, locked and in use since the last storm. What did it mean, not your shadow? I looked out the window. The silhouette of the tower stood still under the pale wash of moonlight. Just a tower, empty. But as I looked away for half a second, I thought the light inside it flickered. 4. When you hear your name on the radio, respond only if it's said twice. Once means it's testing you. That one hit differently. The radio crackled softly beside me, alive but silent. I reached for the dial without thinking, then stopped. The static hissed faintly, like something waiting on the other end. 5. If the trees move and the wind doesn't, close your eyes until it's quiet. I try to laugh at that one. Trees that move without wind. Maybe Dalton had written this during a blackout, or as a scare tactic for rookies. But I couldn't shake the image. whole rows of pine trees shifting as if breathing, inching closer when no one was watching. 6. At 3 a.m., don't look at the lake. It remembers faces. The words bled slightly into the page. Someone had pressed the pen hard, as if shaking. I didn't know what lake it meant, but the phrasing, remembers faces, felt wrong. Like it wasn't a metaphor, like it was a fact. 7. When dawn comes, count the number of birds you hear. If there are none, leave. Underline that one. Practical, at least. A silence that complete might mean gas leak, dead zone, something real. Something explainable. 8. If you ever find a second copy of these rules, burn it immediately. It's not from us. That line chilled me more than I wanted to admit. Not don't read it, not ignore it, but burn it. Because it wasn't from us. Who was us? I sat back, rubbing my temples. The rain had stopped. The forest outside was unervingly still, like the world had hit pause. I reached for the radio and pressed the transmit button. Station 1 to base. Chief Dalton, do you copy? A crackle. Static. Then silence. I tried again, louder. Chief Dalton, this is Reeves. What is this notebook supposed to be? The protocol list? What's? The radio hissed, and then a voice came through. My voice. You shouldn't have read them out loud. Every hair on my neck stood on end. I turned toward the window, and somewhere deep in the woods, something whispered my name once. Once. The first night passed quietly. Too quietly. I remember sitting by the cabin window, watching the trees sway under the thin wash of moonlight. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind felt magnified in that kind of silence, the kind that seems to listen back. I told myself I was just tired from the drive up. The woods always sounded alive your first few nights out here. Branches shifting, distant coyotes, the soft hum of the forest breathing. Still, I left the lantern burning low beside my bunk, just in case. Nothing happened. But the second night, something changed. It started around 2 a.m. I woke up because of a noise, steady, deliberate. Footsteps. Someone was walking circles around the cabin. Slow, heavy steps on damp soil. 1, 2, 3, pause. Then again. I froze, holding my breath. Whoever was wore boots. Ranger boots. I could hear the faint scrape of the soles against gravel. Dalton, I whispered, barely audible. No answer. The steps continued. 3 full circles around the cabin. Then silence. I didn't dare open the door. I just sat there listening, waiting. When morning came, the forest was bathed in pale light and fog. I finally worked up the nerve to step outside. That's when I saw them, the footprints. Clear, wet imprints on the wooden porch. Except they weren't leading to the door. They were leading away from it. And the first print started inside the cabin. I just stood there staring, my stomach hollowing out. I hadn't left the cabin all night. The door had been locked, but there they were, fading prints of ranger boots, the same size as mine, walking straight into the forest. That afternoon, I tried to radio Dalton. Static. No response. I told myself maybe the storm the night before had scrambled the antenna. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there with me, or something that wanted me to think they had. By nightfall, I was already on edge. The woods were darker than before, the kind of darkness that swallows even sound. I turned in early, but sleep didn't come easy. Around 1:47 a.m., the radio clicked on by itself. A crackle, then a low voice, rough, distorted, yet unmistakably human. Evan, you left the door open. My eyes snapped open. The door was locked. I checked it twice before bed. I could see the bolt in place from across the room. Still, that voice, the way it said my name, it sounded like someone who'd been standing just outside, watching me. Who is this? I asked, moving slowly toward the radio. No answer, just a faint hiss of static. Then I heard something else. A faint flicker of light through the trees, about a quarter mile out. The watchtower, except there was only supposed to be one. The real tower stood beside my cabin, half rotted and unused. But this one, this second tower glowed faintly red, like an old warning light pulsing through fog. I grabbed the binoculars. My hands were shaking as I lifted them. Through the lens, I could see it clearly. The tower looked identical to mine. Same build, same rusted railings, same chipped paint. And at the top, there was a figure. Someone was standing in that tower. They weren't moving, just staring in my direction. I felt my chest tighten. I lowered the binoculars, and the light in the tower blinked out. Gone. When I looked again, there was nothing there, but I could still feel it. That invisible weight, that sense that something in those woods had turned its attention toward me. At 2:59 a.m., the phone rang. Old rotary phone. Black, dusty, hadn't been used in years. The sound nearly made me jump out of my skin. I didn't move, just stared at it ringing. Once, twice, over and over. I let it go on for maybe 30 seconds before the sound stopped abruptly, cut off like a throat closing mid-breath. Then, from the radio speaker, another click. My voice came through. Not someone imitating me. My exact voice. Same tone. Same cadence. You forgot Rule 6. Rule 6. At 3 a.m., don't look at the lake. It remembers faces. I froze. My eyes darted toward the clock. 3 a.m. exactly. Outside, the fog had rolled in heavy. Through the window, I could barely make out the tree line, but past it, down the slope, I could see the faint shimmer of the lake's surface. Something moved there, just a ripple at first. Then, for a moment, I thought I saw a face beneath the water's reflection. Mine. The lights flickered. While I looked back at the radio, it was dead. The only sound left was my own heartbeat. And somewhere outside, a single knock on the cabin door. 3 slow knocks. I didn't answer. I just whispered to myself, Rule 1. Don't engage. Don't engage. And waited for dawn. By the 4th night, the forest had stopped pretending to be normal. The air felt heavier, thicker somehow, like the whole place was holding its breath. Even the usual hum of insects had gone quiet. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was suffocating. I hadn't slept properly since that voice on the radio. I kept replaying it in my head, over and over. You forgot Rule 6. What did that mean? Had I actually looked at the lake? Had it looked back? The idea chewed at me. So when the night came again, I sat by the window, flashlight in hand, staring at the tree line like a man daring the dark to move first. 2 a.m., nothing. 2:30, nothing. But just before 3 o'clock, the same faint red glow appeared deep in the forest. That damned second tower. This time, I wasn't going to just sit and watch. I needed proof. Something I could point at and say, see, I'm not losing it. So I grabbed the spotlight from the gear rack and flipped the main switch, breaking Rule 3. After midnight, the watchtower is not your shadow. Don't look at it. The beam cut through the fog like a blade. At first, all I saw were the trees, thick, ancient pines standing in a wall of darkness. But then the light caught something metallic. A structure. The tower. It looked identical to mine, only wrong somehow. The metal seemed too new, too perfect. And in the center of that high platform, the figure stood again, facing me. Through the light, I could see every detail this time. The uniform, the patch on the shoulder, the stance. It was me. I stared at him, or it, through the beam. The other Evan didn't flinch, didn't blink, just raised a pair of binoculars and stared back. A chill crawled up my spine. I dropped the spotlight for half a second, and when the beam swung back to where the tower had been, the forest was empty. Gone. No structure, no reflection, just a patch of scorched earth where the trees had been. The ground looked burned, as if something had stood there for years before being ripped away in a single instant. I don't remember running, but I was already halfway back to the cabin when I realized I was gasping for air. That's when I saw it. The lights inside my cabin were on. I'd left them off. I knew I had. Every bulb, every lantern. But through the window, a dim yellow glow was flickering behind the curtains. Someone was in there. I sprinted up the steps and grabbed the handle. Locked. From the inside, I pounded the door with my fist. Hey, who's in there? No sound. I hit it again. Harder. Opened the damn door. And then, from inside, a voice answered. My voice. This post is unmanned. The world went still. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My skin prickled. My mouth went dry. My heartbeat thudded against my skull. That wasn't a recording. That wasn't an echo. It was me, and it was standing on the other side of the door. I stumbled back down the steps, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The woods groaned, the sound of trunks bending, creaking under invisible pressure. The ground itself seemed to shift. Somewhere beyond the cabin, I heard a long, low creak, like a tree being pulled from its roots. Then another. The forest was moving. Branches scraped together, trunks twisting. I could hear it, the rhythm of something massive breathing in slow, steady intervals. Inhale, crack, exhale, groan. The wind was still. There was no storm, yet the entire line of trees swayed, like something beneath them was shifting their roots. I backed away, light darting from one trunk to another. For a moment, I saw a figure move between them, too fast, too tall. The reflection of my own silhouette sliding deeper into the trees. The door behind me clicked, just once, not opening, not closing, just that faint metallic sound of a bolt sliding into place, like someone inside was making sure it stayed locked. I turned, breathing hard. "Whoever you are," I said, voice cracking. "This isn't funny." No response. Then from the radio inside, faint through the cabin wall, my own voice again. "If you're still out there, run." The light flickered once and died. I don't remember making it back inside that night. I just remember the forest sound following me long after I thought I'd escaped it. The deep, rhythmic creaking of trees inhaling in the dark. And for the first time, I realized the rules weren't warnings. They were memories. Things someone before me had already learned too late. The next morning, the forest was quieter than ever. Too quiet. No birds. No rustle of branches. Not even the faint groan of the trees that had kept me up all night. It was like the woods were holding their breath again, waiting for me to realize what I'd done. I barely slept. My hand still shook when I reached for the radio. "Chief Dalton, this is Reeves. Do you copy?" A burst of static, then silence. "Chief, I saw something last night. A second watchtower. Someone who looked like me." Static again, long and heavy. Then, finally, a voice came through, old, tired, almost afraid. "You saw it, didn't you?" A pause. The mirror post. My throat went dry. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Dalton exhaled, and I could hear the faint rasp of him lighting a cigarette on the other end. "Listen to me, son. There's something I should have told you before you went out there." He spoke slower this time, voice like gravel grinding through static. "Back in '97, this place was part of a government research project called Project Hollow Eye. The name alone sounded wrong. Empty, soulless. They were testing a neural surveillance network," he went on. "The idea was to link a ranger's awareness directly to the monitoring system. Cameras, motion sensors, all tied to the operator's own mind. The forest would be alive, in a way, aware of intruders, wildfires, everything." I rubbed my temple. "You mean the forest could think?" "Not think," Dalton said. "Remember, that's what they got wrong. The system didn't just monitor, it started to record consciousness. Every ranger who worked here, every image it processed, every sound it heard, it stored them, piece by piece." I felt my skin crawl. "You're saying it copied people?" "No, I'm saying it learned them," he said grimly. "Then it started making its own versions. Shadows that could move where the rangers moved, talk like them, even call like them." I could hear him drag from his cigarette again, the ember crackling through the static. "They shut the project down after one of the operators vanished. Name was Sergeant Dale Vance. Only thing they found was his boots, both filled with ash. After that, they sealed the perimeter, burned the test servers, and left what was still active to rot." "But it didn't rot, did it?" I whispered. Dalton's voice hardened. "No, the system stayed on. The forest's roots carried it deeper. The cameras decayed, but the network, whatever it became, never stopped learning. It became part of the land itself. Part of them." I looked around the cabin. The walls, the window frames, the rusting fixtures. Everything suddenly felt wrong, too still, too aware. "Those rules I gave you," Dalton continued, "they're not folklore. They're countermeasures. Each one keeps the system from syncing with you. Syncing, I repeated numbly. Once it maps your mind, your memories, your voice, it starts to build a version of you. At first, it's just an echo, then a reflection, then it takes your place. You'd never even know it happened. A shiver crawled down my neck. So that thing I saw, it wasn't me. Dalton's voice cracked, barely audible. It was what's left of the last operator who broke Rule 8. The radio hissed, but he wasn't done. Listen carefully. If you see the other post again, don't stare. Don't acknowledge it. Whatever's on that tower isn't alive. It's the system replaying what it remembers. The longer you look, the stronger it gets. I swallowed hard, staring at the radio like it might start talking in my own voice again. Dalton sighed. You've already been scanned, Reeves. You triggered it when you turned on that damn light. It's watching now, comparing. Comparing what? There was a long silence. Which one of you deserves to stay? Then the radio went dead. The forest outside shifted again, the trees groaning like old bones. And for the first time since I arrived at Black Pines, I wasn't sure if I was still me. The final night, the forest felt heavier than ever. The air thick, unmoving, electric. I sat by the radio, hands trembling over the switch. Every rule I had followed now felt useless, like the forest had simply been waiting for me to make it to this point. 1 a.m., silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that hums in your skull. Even the wood beneath my boots seemed to hold its breath. 1:37. The generator flickered once, then steadied. My reflection in the window looked off, just slightly delayed, like the light had taken too long to reach me. 2 o'clock. The knock came. 3 times. Slow. Measured. I froze, every instinct screaming to stay quiet. But I forced the words out, exactly as the rule said. This post is unmanned. The sound stopped. The air tightened. For a few seconds, I thought I'd done it right. Then a whisper slid across the back of my neck. Close. Too close. Then who am I? My blood turned to ice. I turned, slowly, and there he was. Me. Same uniform. Same boots. Same scar above the brow. But his eyes, they burned with a dim red pulse, like the emergency beacon reflecting from somewhere deep inside his skull. He smiled, and I heard my own voice coming out of his mouth, layered with something mechanical beneath it. You shouldn't have looked at the mirror, Evan. The cabin began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The light bulbs blinked. 1, 2, then burst with a sharp hiss. Outside, the forest groaned, branches bending inward, as if the trees themselves were closing in. The glass in the window cracked, spider webbing across the pane. I stumbled backward, grabbing the radio. Dalton, it's here. It's... Static exploded, shrieking through the speaker. Then my own voice echoed back through it. Dalton, it's here. The duplicate stepped closer, tilting his head. His movements were wrong. Too smooth, too synchronized. Now you belong to the forest, he said. His tone was calm, but his mouth didn't move in time with the words. The floorboards split. Beneath them, light. Not fire, but something colder, sterile, like a camera flash stretched into infinity. It rose in tendrils, wrapping around my legs, pulling. I screamed, digging my nails into the doorframe, but everything around me was unraveling. The walls, the air, even sound itself. Through the chaos, I heard his last whisper. Mine, yet not mine. You were always just another recording. The window shattered. A burst of white light swallowed the cabin whole. And then nothing. A week later, Black Pines was operational again. I watched from the edge of the tree line as the new ranger arrived. Young, alert, unaware. Noah Briggs, they called him. He stepped into the cabin, rubbing his hands together against the cold. On the desk lay a single sheet of paper, edges burned and curling from the previous week's chaos. Typed at the top, in bold letters. Supervisor, Lieutenant Evan Reeves. Noah chuckled softly, shaking his head at the title. He flipped the page to read the Black Pines protocols, the ink smudged and faded but still legible. As he reached the bottom, his expression changed. Someone, or something, had added a 9th rule. written in crimson ink. 9. If you ever hear me asking for help, don't answer. It's already too late. The radio clicked on by itself, a low static buzzing through the cabin. Then a voice, raspy, strained, layered with interference, spoke his name. "Welcome to the shift, Ranger Briggs." Noah froze. His eyes darted around the room. I noticed him glance toward the window. The camera slowly panned across the glass, revealing them. 2 shadows. 2 figures standing in the cabin. One of them, clearly Noah. The other, a perfect echo of him. Pale and still, eyes glowing faintly red. Noah swallowed hard. The wind outside whispered through the pines. The radio whispered again, repeating the same words, but this time, it sounded like it was coming from inside the cabin itself. And as I retreated into the trees, I knew Black Pines had already claimed him. Noah's shift had begun. This ending keeps the series' cycle of horror intact, establishing the recursive nature of the protocols, while leaving the fate of the new Ranger open and terrifying.